It's now my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker for this evening's graduation ceremony. It's always exciting when you're able to introduce someone who's at the pinnacle of our profession, and certainly in the area of sports law, you couldn't go any higher than to be General Counsel of the United States Olympic Committee, as our speaker tonight is. Ms. Rana Dershowitz is the General Counsel of the United States Olympic Committee. She is a cum laude graduate of Harvard University. She is an honors graduate of the Harvard Law School. She has done many different things in sports law, but she's also an athlete herself, as you may notice from her biography. She was for 4 years on the Harvard ski team and 2 years served as captain of the ski team. So when she speaks of and to athletes, she knows what she's talking about. And she is well groomed for her position as General Counsel of the United States Olympic Committee, having come from Madison Square Garden, where she was responsible for legal, business, and operational matters for organizations such as the New York Rangers, the New York Liberty of the WNBA, and of course the New York Knicks. And in fact, her one request this evening was, can somebody keep up with how the Knicks game is going tonight? But she's done an awful lot of things in her career which have led to the position she has today as the General Counsel of our United States Olympic Committee. And without further ado, I would like to welcome to the podium Ms. Rana Dershowitz.
Good evening, everyone. At one point in my career, not that many years ago, I was at a stage where my life and my job just weren't working. I had too many responsibilities in the office, too many responsibilities at home, including young kids. The net result was I felt like I wasn't doing anything quite right. Rather than walk away from my personal responsibilities or my job, though, my boss, an individual I have a great deal of respect for, and I started talking about changes we could explore to try and make things work. I came to him with a proposal that I thought would reduce the work on my plate, but still, I hoped, serve the organization's needs. He was open to the idea, as long as my salary reflected the parameters of my changed responsibility. Seemed reasonable to me. So we went back and forth on salary. He sent me a note. The note said, I am stretching to make this work. Stretching, I thought, well, what does that mean? I'm just asking for what's fair. I'm being reasonable. I was upset. I heard his message as suggesting that I was being unreasonable, that I was pushing him outside of his comfort zone, pushing him too far. He meant it, actually, to show that he valued my skills and that he wanted to make it work. Today, I realize that we were both right. My request did make him uncomfortable. I was pushing him outside of his comfort zone, and he did value me and want to make it work. But in hindsight, the exchange taught me something even more important. It taught me the value and importance of stretching. And indeed, I believe we were both better, and the result for the organization was better because he stretched. What do I mean by that? The dictionary defines stretching, well, among other things, as to lengthen, widen, distend, or enlarge by tension. How many of you were athletes? You know I was. I am sure that you remember at least one coach talking to you about the value of stretching. When we were young, we are flexible, we're nimble. Stretching comes easily. It may take focus and conscious effort, but it comes pretty naturally. If we're disciplined and we stretch constantly, that flexibility stays with us. Those toes, they don't seem quite so far away. Our muscles don't cramp up on us. But if we're not disciplined, if we forget to stretch, what happens? We tighten up. We can't reach as far. Our muscles clench, and we can't do as much. Any of you ever get back to stretching after you've stopped for a while? It isn't easy. It hurts. It's uncomfortable. Holding a position that used to feel like it was something simple isn't anymore. And if you stretch too much too soon after you've stopped, you can get hurt. Your muscles are prone to injury. They snap and strain, and sometimes they tear, and no one wants that. Indeed, even if you stretch every day, it's not always easy. It involves hard work, but boy, does it feel good. So why am I talking to you about stretching of all things at your law school graduation? Because right now in your legal careers, you're young, your minds are nimble, your legal muscles are flexible. You can stretch, and you need to, all the time. What does that mean? You each have your entire legal career in front of you. Think about what you want. Set goals for yourselves, long-term goals, and then stretch to get there. Stretch by thinking outside of the box. Don't just assume your career will move forward in one way. Seize opportunities, even if they don't appear directly in the path you envision for yourself. Just like an athlete with an athletic goal, think about cross-training. Think about stretching. Push yourself until you're just a bit uncomfortable, and then hold that position. Accept assignments that you aren't so sure about and do the best that you can in them. Accept offers that may not be exactly what you thought, and use them to learn and to grow. And then do it again the next time something comes up. Just like you're stretching your muscles, if you do it often enough, that uncomfortable feeling will start to feel more comfortable. Let me give you an example. I started my legal career at a big law firm in New York. I never thought I would stay there for a long time. I thought it was going to be a 6-month stint where I got the basic training that I needed before I started my real legal career, not that I had any idea what that was going to be. Though I can tell you that when I started, I had no idea that it was going to be in sports law. I liked the people that I worked with at my firm, and I was engaged by my work. But I got comfortable. I got complacent. I forgot to stretch. And one evening, I got home from my office late at night. I realized that 5 years had gone by. I'd gained 10 pounds, and I'd lost all of my hobbies. I was engaged with my work, but it wasn't how I wanted to live my life. The problem was that I had stopped thinking about the big picture. I had lost my vision. I had forgotten to stretch. So I went into my office the next day, and I talked to several members of the firm. I was honest with them. I told them I needed something different, something new, though I didn't know what that was. I wasn't interested in working for any of their competitors, but I didn't want to just continue on the way that I was. I didn't realize it then, but what I needed to do was stretch my muscles. They were great about it. They arranged for me to sit down with a career counselor, and from that discussion, for the first time, I thought about a career in sports law. Okay, so now I had a goal, but I had no idea how to get there. Although I was only 5 years removed from law school at that point, I was already less flexible, and I had not been stretching. So I started looking for paths. I started to think about the work that I had done and how I could apply it in the field that I wanted to be in. At the same time, I looked for opportunities, any opportunities that would get me closer to my goal. They didn't have to get me to the end zone, but they had to get me closer. In the end, I found a position with a smaller firm doing entertainment work with a little bit of sports. But the work was transactional, and the vast majority of what I had done up to that point was litigation. To get the position, I agreed to take a step back in seniority so that I could learn. Making that step was stretching. Keep in mind, not every reach, not every step, every stretch is a linear move forward. Just as our bodies can stretch in a multitude of directions, so can our careers, and so can our minds. As long as you are continuing to move, though, with the thought of your goals in mind, you are continuing to stretch, even if it's not perfect. A good friend of mine and I were at the playground watching our young children just a few days ago. We were talking about how we don't seem to have any time for ourselves, no time to exercise, no time to stretch in the real meaning of the word. Rather than just accepting it, though, she started stretching right there, using the playground equipment. Was it the best stretching session? No, it wasn't. But it was a step, and every stretch helps. Stretch setting goals for yourself and reaching for them, even if they're beyond you. I mean, think about it. If you can't touch your toes the first time, do you give up? Well, you might, but if you do, you're never touching those toes. Right? But I guarantee you that if you keep trying, you will get closer and closer. At some point, you will reach those toes. For some people, that takes a week. For some people, it's a month. For some, it may be close to a lifetime. But the only way to get there is to never forget to stretch. Get to the edge of your comfort zone. You know what? Get a little bit uncomfortable. Stay there as long as you can, and then come back, get into a more comfortable place, and recover. My work at that entertainment firm was not always easy for me. I was often negotiating with people who had a great deal more experience than I did. And they would tell me how things were done and how to negotiate. I come from a family of litigators. Indeed, up until that point in my career, I really only thought about law as litigating. Negotiation just wasn't in my skill set. But I kept at it, I pushed a little bit further each time, and what was originally outside of my comfort zone became my comfort zone. And more importantly, I learned I was good at something that I never thought was part of my legal career. It was something I never would have learned, and I never would have appreciated if I hadn't stretched. There's another aspect of stretching I want to talk to you guys about today. And that is not just stretching for yourself, but stretching for those around you. Many of you will leave here and have incredible careers, become leaders, and employ many different people. Stretch for them as well as yourself. See the potential in them and push them to grow. Stretch for them by reminding them that they need to stretch. Most importantly, stretch for them by realizing that different people have different needs in the workplace to be successful. They'll come to you with different challenges, with different needs, different goals, and some of those challenges, needs, and goals will be outside of your comfort zone. If you want them to succeed, and by the way, if they succeed, you will succeed, you may need to stretch. When I was a young associate in New York, a friend shared with me an anecdote from her firm. A law student from a top law school with reasonable grades, they weren't great, but they were reasonable, applied for a summer position. That student was blind. When the student's candidacy was discussed at the firm, the lawyers loved the idea, but they couldn't fathom how a blind student would be able to handle the work. And let me be clear, no one at that firm was intending to discriminate against the blind student. But they had forgotten to stretch. They'd forgotten how to stretch. They were inflexible and unwilling to try new things that were outside their comfort zone, and so they passed on his candidacy. And because of that, they lost an opportunity to learn something new from someone who had a different background than them, someone who had different experiences than they had. Perhaps that student wouldn't have worked out, but he did in another firm, and the firm that passed on him missed an opportunity to learn. Don't make the mistake that that firm made because you're inflexible. Remember to stretch. It may be that a colleague or an employee needs a flexible schedule because they have ailing parents or young children, or perhaps because they celebrate a different religion from you, and so they need certain days off from work. Or maybe they struggle with one particular element of their job. If you value them, stretch to find a solution for them. No, stretch to find a solution with them. Maybe it means finding a different role for them that better suits their skills and restructuring your workforce in a way that you hadn't thought about. Maybe it means allowing somebody to telecommute from a different city. Maybe it means suggesting a class or a seminar and giving them the time they need to learn the skill. Or maybe it means simply speaking to them in a way that you're not quite comfortable with. But only if we all stretch will we move forward as a society. Remember, 35 to 40 years ago, it was a stretch for a woman to be hired at a big law firm. But some courageous and proactive women stretched towards their goal of practicing law, and some courageous and proactive men stretched to open the doors to let them in. 30 to 35 years ago, while women were joining firms at much higher rates, they were often only accepted into trusts and estates departments, maybe some employment law. It was a stretch for women to be litigators. But again, it took stretching efforts by everyone involved for women to become much more accepted in litigation practices. 20 to 25 years ago, while women were welcome in all different practice areas in big firms, it was a stretch for those women to have families. The more common path was for them to leave the law when they had a child. Today, we have women in general counsel positions and in law firms across the country in every different department. But we're still very engaged in an active discussion about how American workers can balance work and family. The stretch, though, is that we're having the conversation. We're engaged. It's not always a comfortable discussion. Sometimes it's outside of people's comfort zones. but we're reaching to find the solutions for our society together. Will everyone get it right? No. In fact, there really is no right answer, but I promise you, the more we try as a society, the more we recognize new and different ways to solve these issues, the more flexible we'll become, and the better performance we will all have. The more opportunities we will have for different people with different skill sets to shine in our workplace. The same holds true whether you're talking about inclusion of people from different races, different ethnicities, people with disabilities, or your own personal goals, whatever they may be. Going back to that first boss that I mentioned, I expect he might not have appreciated that I made him stretch. I mean, come on, who likes to be pushed outside of their comfort zone? But I also truly believe that his stretching was good, not just for me, but also for him. It opened him up to new ideas, to new alternative possible approaches. Did everything work out perfectly from that resolution that we reached? No, it didn't. It wasn't perfect, but that's part of growing. You learn as you go. You try new things. Sometimes you succeed, sometimes you fail, and sometimes you just learn something new, which is valuable in and of itself. It's important to recognize as well that sometimes the solution that you come up with may really be the best solution, but you or your job or society may not be ready for it yet. The stretch is too hard. The flexibility isn't there. But know this, while it may not work for you, just by going through it, your stretch may allow that same solution to work the next time around for the next person. Because every time we go through the process, every time we reach for new solutions, we become a little bit more flexible as a society, a little bit more agile, able to reach just a little bit farther. Whether that's accepting a situation that you might not feel perfect, reassessing a goal for yourself, recognizing that the job that you want may look nothing like what you thought it was going to look like 5 years ago when you made your big plans. But as long as you always keep learning and you always keep striving, always seek solutions, always reassess your goals, you'll be great. So throughout your careers and throughout your lives, check yourselves every couple of years and never forget to stretch. Thank you, and good luck.